We are through 2 weeks of the NFL season, and quarterbacks are dropping like flies. We'll give you the latest on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to break down a double header from Monday Night Football where the Chargers got some easy money over an old-looking Raiders team, and Baker Mayfield continued an MVP start to the season. But we got to start with all the big quarterback injury news in the NFL. Before we dive into it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Lauren, on yesterday's show, we talked about the potential that Joe Burrow could be out for the season, and sadly, we did get confirmation on Monday that it looks like that's what it's going to be, and we throw it to Locked On Bengals for the latest.
Bengals fans' biggest fear, well, it crept out its ugly head, and unfortunately, Joe Burrow could miss the entire 2025 season. Hi again, everyone. I'm James Rapien from the Locked On Bengals podcast, and Joe Burrow will miss a minimum of 3 months as the toe injury he suffered on Sunday against the Jaguars means that he's going to have surgery, and only like 2% of people that suffer turf toe injuries need surgery. Joe is one of those people, and it's really, really unfortunate. Obviously, for Joe, you're talking about a third major surgery in 6 seasons. Half of his seasons could ultimately end with a surgical procedure. You had the knee when he was a rookie. You had the wrist a few years ago. You have the toe now. So hopefully it isn't season ending. But even if it's not, you're talking about a team that's not going to have Joe Burrow for 11 games minimum, maybe more. Awful, awful news that we're going to break down throughout the day here on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Check us out wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube.
Now, it's just crazy to me, the irony here of the Bengals finally get the fast start that they've been looking for years. They start out 2-0, but then they lose Burrow. And we could talk about replacement options, maybe go get Kirk Cousins, go get Jameis Winston, this and that. There are different things to do. Go get Shedeur Sanders. That's a spicy one. But I think the reality here is the Bengals are going to stick with Jake Browning because no matter what they do at quarterback at this point, I don't care about the 2-0 start. Their season is over.
Yeah, I mean, they were in a position already where they needed Joe Burrow to elevate the level of play of players around them, and he absolutely was doing it. But
yes,
when you were already going to be so quarterback dependent, you're not going to be able to find at this stage of the process someone who can have that same level of impact on your team. So at this point, it's a matter of seeing what you got with the guys. It's a player evaluation process. How are your young guys performing? Is Jake Browning someone you really do trust and love as a starter? Or do you get 4 games into that and say, you know what, maybe we do want to bring in not a Joe Burrow replacement, but just another young guy to give him a shot and see, hey, let's see what else we can try out at quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I found throughout the day what was kind of interesting is I've seen a lot of people comparing Joe Burrow to Andrew Luck. That just, he's just not going to be able to stay healthy, the situation. I honestly think the Bengals have tried to put an offensive line around him. They've spent a lot of money up front. They brought in veterans. I know it's easy to just say the Bengals haven't put an O-line around him, but I feel like they have tried to a point. But like James talked about, you had the knee injury his rookie year. The wrist injury was way more severe than normal wrist injuries are. And now this, 2% turf toe. It's just tough, and, I make jokes. I'm in Bengals country, and you call him Brittle Burrow, but at some point, you do have to wonder if his body is just going to be able to stand up at this point.
Yeah, it feels like bad luck, but when it happens 3 times, you start to question whether it's more than that, right? It'd be one thing if, he just has this recurring knee issue that just can't go away, and you wonder, is that going to jeopardize his career or whatever? But, when you are jumping around in different parts of the body, you kind of feel like, man, at some point, He's just got to like naturally have better luck there. Like I think it was huge to have him come back last season, play a full 17 games and lead the league in passing, like to kind of show you that these injuries weren't going to be an every year thing that totally derailed his whole career. He can bounce back and presumably he can do it again.
Yeah, he is on his way to a what if, though. So he definitely needs to bounce back and make it happen eventually. But it's interesting that the team that Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals are going to be playing without him are the Minnesota Vikings, who kind of a shock to hear JJ McCarthy is going to be out for about 2 to 4 weeks with an ankle injury. And my guy Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings is certainly disappointed.
I mean, obviously this freaking sucks. I don't want to watch Carson Wentz play football for my team. We've seen enough of that. And he's been a backup for a couple of years now and for a pretty good reason. But as a veteran, a lot of the problems that happened last night are kind of based on like the inexperience. Carson Wentz can like operate a huddle. We know that. There's lots of problems with Carson Wentz. That's not one of them. So maybe Kevin O'Connell can like avoid the need to simplify the offense a little bit, and you can hopefully get things down. The problem is that's not a long-term solution, right? Yes, you can now call your 35-word play calls because Carson Wentz knows how to do a huddle, but that you're going to invite way more problems, right? Like you don't want to make this the long-term starter, and you certainly don't want to just like quit on JJ McCarthy because he doesn't quite have the rhythm of things down yet in his second ever start.
You know, I got to tell you, Lauren, I saw a lot of tinfoil hat theories out there that maybe JJ McCarthy isn't quite as banged up as this injury timeline would say, and maybe the Vikings wanted to get a different look at someone else running their offense because JJ McCarthy was struggling with some of this stuff. And I find it interesting that Kevin O'Connell is this quarterback whisperer and all of that, but yet JJ McCarthy, who had basically a redshirt season, still is having trouble calling the plays, and they have to pare down the playbook. I know it's very conspiracy, but any chance that the Vikings are kind of doing this as a pseudo benching of JJ McCarthy?
Yeah, I love a good football conspiracy whenever I can find one to buy into, but this one's missing a few steps for me, only because it feels like after JJ missed all of last season, what he needs is to be running the offense. Like the Vikings are supposed to be in a position where they can live with some of the warts and the mistakes along the way, understanding that as he messes up, that's how you learn and get better. And that in theory, you have the receivers, the offensive line, the running game, and the defense to say, hey, JJ, you don't have to be perfect. Let's just get as much as we can out of you and let everyone else do the job. So I feel like the Viking, I don't feel like JJ gains that much by being sidelined for a couple more weeks watching the game when that's all he got to do last season. Like he got his time on the bench, and now is the time he needs reps to just get on the same page with receivers and work on some of those communication things that maybe he's having some issues with right now, but that you get better by doing it.
No, you're 100% right. It makes zero sense whatsoever to it be a pseudo benching for him to kind of take a step back or anything like that after just getting a redshirt season last year. You're right there. Now, someone who didn't have a redshirt season last year is Jayden Daniels, and he's another quarterback who his status isn't as confirmed, I guess. It seems to still be up in the air, but there is some thought that Jayden Daniels is going to miss this game this week in week 3 with a knee injury, maybe out multiple weeks. You add that to a Brock Purdy injury that's already taken place, Justin Fields in concussion protocol. You look at the Jets, who are now 0-2. You look at the Commanders, who are 1-1, and you start to wonder, are these teams going to be able to come back from this? And I think that the Commanders are due for regression. And if they don't have Jayden Daniels to elevate them, they're probably going to be in trouble. And quite honestly, I think the Jets maybe got a little bit too much hype in week 1 anyways. Are you overly concerned about Jayden Daniels' injury and what it could mean for the Commanders as they kind of play out the rest of the season?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think in some ways there can be a benefit to him taking a break for a minute. I mean, of course, injury never, the thing you want to happen there. But for someone who was thrown out there as a rookie, played really, really well, and now through the first couple of games, I think the Packers found a few ways to disrupt him. And even against the Giants, like they weren't lighting the world on fire in the passing game there. So I could see there being benefit of JJ McCarthy, or excuse me, of Jayden Daniels, seeing a veteran like Marcus Mariota run that offense, and not that Mariota is going to be like better, but just to kind of see someone else do it and say, oh, maybe that's a different way I could do things, or, oh, they're really defending us that way differently, and I can see it a little bit differently live from the sideline than I am watching it on film or going through it myself.
No, you're 100% right. I think it could mentally help just to kind of reset coming off that fever dream of a year last year where it just seemed like naturally he would not be the player that he was last year. What I will say is this, though. Jayden Daniels was so great last year because of the mobility. If this knee injury lingers into the season, it could certainly hurt their offense and what they're able to do and the things that they like to do with Jayden Daniels in that offense. So it is something to watch. But, man, QBs are dropping like flies, no doubt. But a QB that didn't drop was Baker Mayfield, my MVP pick. And he continued a strong start to the season against the Houston Texans, who look like an absolute mess. Today's episode is presented by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride. They have more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025, whether it be footwork or breathwork. We know that athletes sweat all the details. Well, Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Nappa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, with the all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you could drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. It's Mazda. Move or be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings every financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Lately, I've been getting into investing, and being able to see everything in one place makes it really easy to maintain my financial goals. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the quarterback injuries that are smacking the NFL right now through 2 weeks, but we got some great Monday Night Football games, at least one great Monday Night Football game, I will say. And it was between the Texans and the Buccaneers, and once again, Baker Mayfield, a second game-winning drive in 2 games on the year. Baker Magic and my guy James Yarko from Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Locked On Bucks, broke down the win.
Baker Mayfield did it again, just when the Bucks needed him the most. For the second week in a row, Baker Mayfield orchestrates a fourth-quarter game-winning drive, ending in a Rachaad White touchdown. The Bucks needed every single yard they got on the ground. 169 as a team, over 130 between Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. But the Bucks in this game lose right tackle Luke Dedeke to injury. They lose Elijah Cansey to a pec injury, and the Texans were able to take advantage. Their pass rush was relentless. They were stifling against Mike Evans and Emeka Ibuka, but the Bucks did just enough to make sure that they got their first win in Houston. This snaps a long streak of prime losses. It snaps a 5-game losing streak against the Houston Texans. And for the 5th year in a row, the Buccaneers have started 2-0.
It wasn't pretty all the time. You know, it was a little bit of a slow start. The Bucks have a ton of injuries on their offensive line. They lost Kalijah Kancey, what could be for the entire season on the interior of the defensive line. That's a big loss, but it just doesn't matter because this Bucs team is tough. They're well coached. They tried to give it away on special teams. They're late in the game, but when you have a guy like Baker Mayfield, you have playmakers, you have guys you can trust. The Bucs are just such a tough team to actually kill off. You just can't do it.
Yeah, they're one of those teams that's like a little bit hard to explain, right? Where the sum is greater than the whole of their parts. It's like,
yes,
Baker Mayfield is just like, he's the gamer who figures out a way to pull out a win, and big scramble on fourth down to move the chains. And like, he doesn't even have that impressive of like stat line this season. I mean, towards the bottom of the league in yards per pass attempt, and even this game had 200, a little over 200 yards on 38 attempts. Like, it wasn't like the Buccaneers are lighting the world on fire per se, but they're just like really solid and find a way to be good when they need it the absolute most. And that to me does feel like a combination of good coaching and also like a veteran experienced team that's really kind of coming into its own.
100%. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be a shootout with all these stats, but Baker is just a guy who, when the game is on the line, he's just going to find a way to pull it out. He just finds a way to pull it out. And I got to say, Lauren, my MVP pick, a lot of people were trying to clown me for that, but Baker's got a nice little run going here to start with some game-winning drives and some clutch moments.
Are you worried that it could be a little bit of fool's gold, that it might turn out that, hey, Texans not all that good, Falcons, yeah, they beat the Vikings, but neither team looked particularly good in that game. And then next week, Baker Mayfield's got the Jets, probably without Justin Fields, so can have another big game. But will there be a wake-up call with the Philadelphia Eagles in week 4? And is there something that comes back on earth that says, okay, they're good, but maybe not as good as we thought?
100% that could happen. I don't think it's insane to think that would happen. But I think what I come back to, Lauren, is I do think the Falcons are good. And I know that the Texans' defense is really, really good. So, like, maybe that is the way that it plays out, but I have confidence that the win over the Falcons and a win over that Texans defense on the road in primetime, I do think those are going to hold up, and we won't look back in a month and be like, oh, those wins weren't as good as we thought they were. I don't believe that. I do believe that what we think about those two teams that they beat are real. But what I will say is the Texans, they got some issues, and it's panic time in Houston right now. And my guy, John Hickman from Locked On Texans, he recognizes the issues as well.
Well, the Houston Texans start the season 0-2. I'm John Hickman of the Locked On Texan podcast after a hard-fought game where the defense forced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense to several punts after taking an early lead, going up 14-10. The offense was unable to capitalize on that throughout the game. A late touchdown by Nick Chubb helped Houston gain the lead, failed two-point conversion. But the story of the night is simple. The Houston Texans' allegiance to players that constantly show them that they cannot be trusted on the field continues to hurt them. Dare Ogunbowale with terrible protection, right? That was a problem. And then also play calling tailed off throughout the game. This team's bad habits grew rapidly throughout the game, and they continue to shoot themselves in the foot. At least 3 first downs given up from penalties. That was an issue. C.J. Stroud under duress throughout the entire night, and the red zone offense was stinky. Make sure you listen to the Locked On Texans podcast throughout the week as I continue to cover your team every day.
Listen, Lauren, I've been pushing the narrative since the offseason. The Texans' offensive line got worse. We don't know that their first-time play caller, Nick Caley, is any better than Bobby Slowick was. I thought it was a big mistake to go out and get a new offensive coordinator who had never called plays before in the NFL. It just seems like you're making the same mistake over again. The Texans are 0-2 after winning a playoff game in back-to-back years. What's your read on the Texans right now? Do you think that they make the playoffs?
I'm right there with you that it feels like the same problems exist from last year, despite trying to change those very same problems and making no progress there. Right. But it feels to me like a team that's, primed to not go nearly as far as we thought. I mean, I think that division is going to prove to be a little bit tougher than we always discredit the AFC West in the preseason, no matter what, but we certainly see the Colts playing really well, and Titans are showing some flashes with Cam Ward, and they got the Jaguars next week to kind of figure out how things are going to stack up there. We could easily see the Texans, starting the season 1-4 or even 2-3 heading into their bye week, and feel like at some point that might just be too much for them to climb out of, because it's just hard to imagine like where does this offensive line get better? I mean, I know you got a rookie left tackle who should improve over time, but veterans along the interior, this is who they are, and these problems are going to be who they are. So they're going to need to kind of look in the mirror and find some ways to overcome and accept the deficiencies that they're just going to have at this point, and find ways to overcome, because they can't run the ball very well. They can't protect CJ Stroud very well. And it's just sort of this cascading effect from there.
And we're seeing the pressure affect CJ Stroud. He missed a lot of passes in this game too. It wasn't like that, he was perfect and just couldn't get any time. There were times where he had time to make something happen and still wasn't able to do it and missed throws. So I think we saw all the issues that people were worried about with the Texans on full display. And while that defense is really good and that pass rush is incredible, we saw Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter both go out there and get sacks. When the game was on the line, the JV version of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line was able to bow their neck and hold them off and let Baker Mayfield make plays at the end of the game. And you got to be really disappointed if you're a Texans fan watching that. So, yeah, I am very, very concerned about the Texans here. I think with the Colts playing better football, like you said, I know Jacksonville just lost to Cincinnati, but they're going to be more competitive. I don't really think the Titans are going to be able to do much either way. But those two other teams are going to be competitive with the Texans, and with them being an 0-2 hole now, it is going to be tough for them to climb out with a first-place schedule. But do want to talk about a team that I don't have a lot of concerns with the Los Angeles Chargers, but there is at least one big concern that I think could be the Chargers' Achilles heel as we get later in the season. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is officially here, and FanDuel is making sure that you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Again, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether it's player props, money lines, over-unders, spreads, building a same-game parlay with a bunch of those different things. Or even if I miss kickoff, I can still jump into the action with some live bets. It makes every game more exciting, whether I'm watching my team or just keeping an eye on my fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy. It's the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays, Mondays, or Thursdays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL, a late night edition here with the Monday night doubleheader. Stop doing that, NFL, all right? Us over here on the East Coast, we're sick of it, all right? No, too much, NFL, just too much. But either way, we got the Chargers basically rolling the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't think it's a very surprising outcome whatsoever. And my guys from Locked On Chargers didn't think it was a big surprise either.
The Chargers defense absolutely throttled the Raiders on Monday night, and they are now 2-0 and atop the AFC West. The Raiders made some big improvements, adding Geno Smith and Pete Carroll in the offseason, but it didn't matter because the Chargers dominated them, sacking Geno Smith 3 times for 30 yards lost, and also picking him off another 3 times, holding him to a passer rating of 37. It was great to see this defense rally around their captain after losing Khalil Mack early in this game. It didn't matter, and you wouldn't know it because their other stars like Derwin James and Deion Henley stepped up in a big way. Henley with an interception and a sack in this one. And the Chargers offense looked great in the first half. Quentin Johnston had a big touchdown, but they sputtered in the second half, and the defense was there to bail them out time and time again. But now they are 2-0, headed to Denver with a chance to go 3-0 and 3-0 in the division. But for the full breakdown, make sure to check out the Locked On Chargers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know, Lauren, I got to tell you, I think the Chargers were impressive. Justin Herbert looks fantastic. But as I was saying, I think there is an Achilles heel here, and I think there might be 2 for the Chargers. They cannot run the football. They can't. And for a Greg Roman offense and a Jim Harbaugh team, they can't run the football. 3.1 yards per carry, 26 carries, 81 yards. We saw it against the Chiefs as well. And you know, like I know, as you get late into the season, you got to be able to run the ball, not just when you want to, but when you need to. And I think the Chargers are a flashy team right now. They're playing really good. They get some big-time wins. But I am worried about their long-term viability as a playoff team if they can't run the football. And with Khalil Mack, if he's out, and also we're talking about Khalil Mack, who's at the end of his career, I don't think that they have the bona fide pass rusher that they're going to need to make the big play. They get the 3 sacks. That's great. But I still in the back of my mind have concerns about this Chargers team with their inability to run the football late in games to close things out, and then their inability to kind of close things out from a pass rush standpoint without that alpha pass rusher.
Yeah, I think you put it well there. Like they weren't able to close this game out as definitively as they should have, in large part because they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't control the clock in that way. And it kind of felt like, I don't want to say playing with their food because I don't think it was intentional or anything, but like they let the Raiders stay in this and kind of think they had a chance for quite a while into that fourth quarter when really they shouldn't. I mean, this was a lot more of a one-sided performance than the final score suggests here. Like when you pick off Geno Smith 3 times and you only win 20-9, like that doesn't feel like you made the most out of all of your opportunities out there. And it's just strange to me because the offensive line generally did a good job in pass protection and gave Herbert plenty of clean pockets to throw from. So they'll put in the extra blockers and everything, and that works out fine. So why they can't do the same thing in the ground game, I don't have a good explanation for it. You want to say coaching, but like this staff has always been good at running the ball. That's the one thing they do well.
Yeah, that's what's perplexing about it. And credit to Greg Roman this year for leaning more into the passing game, but it's almost like we shouldn't give them credit for doing it because they're being creative and just like, oh, we're modernizing. And it looks like they kind of have to because they might know that they're not able to run the football. So I again, peek behind the curtain here on the East Coast. I'm like, come on, Chargers, let's close this thing out. Let's, so we can get on the road here. And they just could not do it. Now, on the flip side, the Raiders had a really good win in week 1 on the road against the Patriots. But this one was awfully deflating. And my guy Q from Locked On Raiders talked about the loss.
What's happening? Q Myers here, Locked On Raiders podcast, underneath Allegiant Stadium, waiting to get inside the locker room as the Raiders take the L on Monday Night Football to the Chargers. Geno Smith did not have a very good night. Started off with an interception, felt like he ended with the interception. The defense did everything they could to keep the team in the game, only giving up the 20 points, but all in all, just a bad night for the offense. So we'll get some reaction from inside the Raiders locker room, let you know how the players are feeling as they're 1-1 after 2 games, dropping to their division rival, the LA Chargers. Just a better team. Talked about it throughout the course of the week that the Raiders were stepping up in weight class, going from the New England Patriots to the Chargers. They learned what they can do, what they can't do, and how they need to get better. But all in all, Chip Kelly, offense, Geno Smith, Ashton Genty, not enough production from that side of the ball to be competitive in this one, and the Raiders lose on Monday Night Football. For more of this, make sure you tune into the Locked On Raiders podcast. I'm your boy Q.
Yes, he is, man. Live on the scene, letting us know. But here's the thing. I think the weight class and how appropriate that Q drops a weight class reference when there was a big fight over the weekend in Vegas with Bud Crawford taking home some titles. Now, this ain't Locked On Boxing, but I do want to say, like Canelo Alvarez, the Las Vegas Raiders look like a team that was just old. They look like they were run by old guys to kick field goals when you're down 14 late in the fourth quarter. They had like a 19-play drive for 11 minutes, and you finish with 3 points to leave yourself down 11 points. Like, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Chip Kelly is doing that classic college football thing where you just constantly rotate in your guys, not giving Ashton Genty enough opportunities, not giving Brock Bowers enough opportunities. Like, it just looked like a team. The quarterback, Geno Smith, looks like he's past his prime. The coaching staff doesn't look like they're making the right decisions and kind of going with some old school stubborn mentality things. I just was not impressed by the Raiders, and it was a major drop-off from a team that played well against the Patriots. But I don't think the Patriots are all that great of a team either. I think they beat a bad team in the Dolphins. I don't think they're a very good team. I don't think the Raiders are a very good team either after beating the Patriots, and all of that kind of lines up with what we saw tonight.
Yeah, it just looks like a team that's like across the board close, but not good enough in a lot of different areas. Like Geno Smith did some nice things, and then like a couple bad interceptions and one interception that hits the receiver in the hands. But then they get Genty rolling a little bit there, but then not enough. And everything across the board, you just feel like, oh, there's something there, and then it's never enough, and it never quite comes together. And to your point about the running game too, I think we saw it right in the game before with the Texans where Nick Chubb couldn't get anything going all game, and then finally at the end he breaks away the 25-yard touchdown run. And it felt like Genty was kind of working towards that, and then never really got the opportunity to do so. And I get you're trailing on the scoreboard, so you can't run as much, especially towards the end. But like you draft a guy that high, he needs to be a premier part of your offense and a premier weapon there. Same with Brock Bowers. Like it's just not like modern day football logic of like draft a guy high, great playmaker, like feed them the ball, and that doesn't seem to be the strategy.
Yeah, and of course, Bowers is dealing with the knee injury, so maybe the coaching staff would tell you behind the scenes, like, hey, we didn't want to force feed it to him too much, but the lack of explosiveness in that offense when they have some playmakers like that is disappointing. Geno Smith, literally awful. Any pass that went past 10 yards on the night, just nothing. Late in the fourth quarter, he was 0 on passes over 10 yards and had the 3 interceptions on passes over 10 yards. Like, it was a disaster, and credit to the Chargers. They really did, put the lid on the basket, so to speak, but it does make you worry about what kind of the philosophy is in the coaching staff with the Las Vegas Raiders going forward and how they're going to operate that. And Geno Smith has been a good player the last couple of years, resurrected his career with Seattle, but he looked a little bit washed out there too. We'll see what happens with the Raiders going forward. But that's going to do it for us today here on Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.